Welcome to the Scared So What podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Grant Van Ulbrich. This is the show where we break through the fear of change and ask the question, scared? So what? Each week we dive into personal change management, coaching, and leadership for the future, giving you real-world tools, insights, and stories to help you lead yourself and others through transformation. Whether you're navigating change in your life, your career, or your organization, this is your space to learn, to grow, and to take bold action. So, are you ready? Let's move from fear to forward. Hello there, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Dr. Grant, your host, and today we're talking about Scared So What? What is it? Well, Scared So What is the world's first personal change management model and technology system. But think about that. Scared so what? Personal change. Have you ever been taught how to manage personal change for yourself? That's a question I like to ask a lot of people, and mostly all over the world, people have said no, they haven't been taught how to manage change for themselves. And as you reflect upon that, think back when you were little. Maybe in school, maybe with your mom, your dad, your brothers, your sisters, maybe a teacher or professor or somebody close to you that you looked up to and you admired. Whenever you went to them and you had a change situation that happened, and did you express it to them and you were full of fear, worry, anxiety? What did they say to you? Well, maybe they said, don't worry about it. Maybe they said, you'll be fine. Maybe they said, just get on with it. And maybe they said, you know what? I'll help you through this. I'll give you my best advice. But you know what? As you reflected upon that for about 5 minutes, it maybe felt good. But after that, you just started to go right back into that stress, worry, fear, and anxiety, didn't you? And that's because we've never been taught how to manage personal change for ourselves. And that is something that I am working diligently to change. Here on the podcast, we're going to talk about Scared So What? What is it? It is the first personal change management model. We'll also talk about coaching. And what is the art of coaching and the practice of coaching? And how is it used worldwide? We'll also talk about leadership. And I know that there are a lot of leadership models out there and different styles and different pros. But what I want to talk about is how do you set the foundation? And what is that? And through that, we'll start to talk about what is transactional leadership and what is transformational leadership. And we'll dive into it on this show to find out what do they all mean? How do they intertwine together? And how can we practice that for ourselves? So again, I'm Dr. Grant. A little bit more about me. This is our first episode of the Scared So What podcast, and I thank you so much for tuning in. If you're curious about how to make your life better, how to avoid stress, anxiety, fear, and unnecessary worry, well, this is the show for you. Scared So What was born here in London, England, in my master's program. And what is that? So, for about 20 years, I've been working in the cruise industry, and I've worked 15 years on board ships all across the world. But in 2018, the leadership that I was working for said, hey, Grant, can you go over to Europe and can you make our first sales manual? And I thought, all right, well, that's a new change. Sure, I can do that. That'd be great. So I did it. I went over to Barcelona, moved my family. Well, I got established in Barcelona and started to work with the teams there. But I went into this master's program, and it was the first master's for sales transformation. And actually, it was the first master's education program for sales. And it was here in London, and it starts with Consalia Sales Business School, and it was accredited through Middlesex University. So I was going back to school, back to university. And actually, when I say back, my transition was a little bit different. I started out in Kansas, central state of the United States, and I went to my primary schools there, but then I went into the U.S. Navy. And so I really truly hadn't been in university until now. Okay? Life experiences, they change us, right? They can transform us. So this leads me to where we are today. All right, so in 2018, I went into this master's program and we started to learn about sales, right? It was a sales transformation program. How do we transform our sales practices worldwide? And more importantly, in module 4 of that program was Change management. How do we lead truly transformational change? Not change like project management, but change that transforms the business entity. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that throughout these podcasts. We're going to talk about what is change, what is change management, and what is the difference between organizational change and personal change. So, in this program, we learned all about the top 8 global, leading worldwide change management models and how they're applied and how they're supposed to be applied within organizations. But you know what? That really didn't sit with me. I learned them and I thought, well, this is great. I understand more so a deeper view on how to manage change and process it through an organization. But one thing quickly stood out to me. These change models don't include me. And think about that. If you look at all the global typical change models, the structure is you might be in shock, you might be in fear, you might resist, you might then eventually reject the change, and then hopefully at the end you're going to accept the change. Now, that's just not really the way we all live. But that doesn't mean that these change models are bad or if they're defunct, because that's not the truth. It's furthest from the truth. Actually, organizational change management in itself is very beneficial. And these models, as they were designed, are very beneficial. The problem is that they are being used as a one size fits all approach. And that is why so much change fails. Okay? The key point in my research in the master's program was to find out, well, why does the change fail and what can we do about it? And so, again, in that program, I raised my hand to my professors and I said, you know what? I appreciate all of these organizational change models, but the one thing that I can't do is I can't force them on my people. And I see them as the structure as almost project management intent driven. How do we push change through? So you had the McKinsey 7S, which is all about the shared values and then looking at the outer elements of how we can process the change flows. And then you look at Dr. John Cotter, a brilliant model. He says that we have to start with a sense of urgency around a unique offering, a unique change principle. And then he has the steps of how we manage this through the organization. You also look at what's known as the SARA curve, SARA. And many people say that this is attributed to Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She's no longer with us, but her foundation very much is her son, Ken Ross, of whom I actually interviewed in my research. I got to speak with him about what is her model and what was it truly for. And I'll tell you, the way businesses are using it today, that's not how she intended it. Her model and her methodology and research was on patients experiencing death and or dying. And so what a traumatic experience, but a transition itself. And so her model was created to mimic that. And in actuality, her model had 13 steps, but it was too difficult to communicate to the rest of the world. So she broke it down into her 5 steps change curve. But the SARA curve has been transitioned into business and really abused. So much so, it's being used by industries and organizations on personal change, personal improvement plans, performance plans, and directive plans, saying that people are going to be in shock, they're going to be angry, they will resist the change, and then finally they'll magically accept it. Well, I just don't think that's true. Actually, no, it's not. So think about change as it applies to you. Personal change is any type of change that happens to you, with you, for you, or about you. It's not about the organization. It could be caused by the organization, but it's not about them. It's about you. Okay? So think of that SARA curve as I just demonstrated to you. They're going to say you're going to be in shock, you're going to be angry, you'll resist it, and then magically accept it. Is that true of all change? Personal change can be positive, it can be neutral, and it can be negative. So let me ask you, at work, you just got a promotion. Are you going to be in shock? Well, maybe. Are you going to be angry? Probably not. Are you going to resist it? Yeah, maybe not. Maybe your first day you might have a little anxiety, right? Getting to know who. But will you eventually accept it? Yeah, probably so. So the model as it is it doesn't apply in all elements. And it doesn't account for positive change that you as an individual can experience. And that's critically important. So again, back in that master's program, in that module on organizational change, I raised my hand to my professors and I said to them, I said, listen, can you accept change? Yes. Can you reject change? Yes. Well, we have a problem. And they said, well, why is that? I said, because these models don't allow for that. They don't allow for the individual to have choice. They don't allow for the individual for critical reflection or to make an informed decision. It's not about the individual. It's always about the organization. And I said, I can't move forward and forcefully use these on my people. Where is the personal change model for me? And while there have been many attempts to try and force these models to fit that mode, one truly didn't exist. And so in the master's program, the challenge was, well, Grant, maybe for your project, your master's thesis and your research, you need to actually create the first bespoke personal change model. And so I said, game on. Game on. And that's what we've done. It's called Scared, So What? And it's based on the fear of change. And deep at the root of change, that fear, is metathesophobia. Now, that's a big word. Try to put that into a model. But I actually wanted to educate this in everyday speak so everybody could learn about it and talk about it. And so I focused on scared. And sometimes we get scared of positive change. Think new job, new house, new car, big expenses, change in families, change in structures. Doesn't matter if it's positive or negative. You actually do have the ability to feel and to reflect on that. And yes, it can be scary. Just like negative change experiences can be scary. But you know what? Your body and your mind reacts very similarly. And in essence, what your mind is telling you to do is to do something. And that's where we are stuck in fear, worry, stress, and anxiety. And that actually transfers over into the physicality. You get that in your neck. You get the tension in the back of your neck. Headaches come through, rapid breathing, maybe goosebumps, cold sweats, whatever it is. Again, doesn't matter if it's a positive change or negative change or even neutral. So it doesn't have to be that you are scared of change. And I don't want you to take the word literally. I want you to use it as a model and as a process so that you can start to break down change and critically reflect on it. And the goal is to make an informed decision, not an assumptive one. Doing this gets you out of the fear and worry and stress and anxiety. But you can't stop there. Again, in the organizational change management that we were learning, the change is done. The consultants all wash their hands and collect their paychecks and go home. And the organization's leadership says, well, the change is done. But again, it doesn't take into account the human factor. That is you. You are the missing gap when it comes to change management. Think about that. At work, have you ever had a big change, an organizational structure, a new job, a promotion, or maybe you didn't get the promotion, or whatever it happens? Doesn't always have to be at work. It can be at home, right? Moving, relocating, experiencing death and dying of relatives and friends. Family members get sick. There's all types of personal change that happen to you, but we haven't been taught how to manage that. And that is where we are going to start to learn all about that in the Scared So What podcast. Now, we're also going to talk about so what. Organizational change management models say that the change is done, but it's not for you, is it? You know, the human mind goes up, it goes down, and sometimes we're happy, sometimes we're sad, sometimes we're angry, and sometimes all in the same 5 minutes. Do you relate? I think we all can. But as change continues for us, even though the organization says it's done and it's over, the transition can be slower for us. So we have to have our own so what. And what does that mean? It's our own planning mechanism. So what is all about creating your own plan for you so that you can actually enact the change in the way that you want, not the way somebody else wants. And that's critically important. So Scared So What brought together actually helps you to process your feelings about change, and then make your plan of what you're going to do to make the change work for you. And as we go into each of these episodes, I'll start to break down the model so that you can actually learn it for yourself. And then I'll also highlight how my first generation app is available for you on the Apple and Android store, and you can get it absolutely free. And that means that you can start managing personal change right now for yourself in the palm of your hand, wherever you are. Okay? Are you with me so far? Personal change. You experience it every day of your life. Shouldn't you know how to manage that? The answer is yes. And here on the podcast, we're going to uncover that. And I can't wait to also talk to you about how does this relate to coaching? And also, how does it transition into leadership? Think about that. Leadership, we have so much to unpack there. There's many different leadership styles, but I want to talk about the foundations of leadership and how you, in your leadership capability, can embed coaching and also help guide people through change as it becomes personal to them, wherever they are. Here on the podcast, it is time to make change work, at home, and on the go, for you and for others. Thanks for joining us here on the Scared So What podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Grant Van Ulbrich. If you found any of this information insightful, well, give us a like and follow along. Make sure that you tune in each week for more episodes as we talk further about what is personal change, how do you manage it with Scared So what about coaching, and also leadership, and how all three of these tie together. If you'd like to learn more, then go to our website at www.scaredsowhat.com. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope that you come back soon.